Welcome to the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast with your host, Brandon Seigel. I'm a published author, speaker, entrepreneur, and private practice strategist dedicated to transforming the way that healthcare functions. This podcast is all about empowering you to create the change you want to see. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Seigel. In today's Quick Tips episode, we're talking about creating your practice's ideal candidate profile. And so when we're talking about ideal candidate profile, part of this is that we're trying to figure out who fits our culture, who doesn't. And it's so easy to get stuck on idealism. Like, I ideally want someone who cares. I ideally want someone who wants to work harder and not make as much money or whatever that is. But really what we're looking for when we're developing this is that we're understanding those hard factors that that most people don't fit. It's about looking for the hair out of place that's required to get the job done, if that makes sense. So today we're going to talk about different aspects of building this candidate profile, attracting and repelling so that we're getting into that right mix. But one of the things I want to talk about is this idea of job posting. So we write job descriptions. There's two different aspects here. So when we say job posting, that's an advertisement. Sometimes we call our job advertisements job descriptions. The reality is that a job advertisement is essentially trying to find our right candidate. We are trying to attract those that fit what we're looking for, repel those that aren't. When we're doing a job description, it's really important that you know that a job description typically is about accountability. This is the expectations of the role. This is how many pounds you need to lift. This is all the physical, mental, experience, expertise, etc. And so job description is really kind of like the accountability measure of like, this is what you're being held to a standard of. And so a lot of the times we call them job descriptions, but what we mean is job advertisement. And I think a lot of job advertisements fail. I also think a lot of job descriptions fail. And a lot of the time is with a job description, we give a wish list, but most people don't fit that wish list. So there's no accountability to it. It's a jumble of credentials, buzzwords, vague phrases like, you must be a team player. You must be passionate about patient care. I'm sorry. Every single person defines himself as a team player. Like, I've never walked to someone who says, hey, Brandon, I am not a team player. I just think that you should know that up front. No, everyone's like, I'm a team player. So we say about these things, and same thing with passionate about patient care. Have you ever met a doctor that's like, actually, I hate patient care. I'm just doing it because I need to do it? No, they're going to be like, I'm passionate about helping people. I'm passionate about the quality of care, and at the end of the day, what happens when I put team player, when I put patient care, when I put all these buzzwords, I attract everyone. Think of it in this way. You drop a net with every ounce of meat, food, and everything into the ocean, every fish is going to come. What I'd rather do is drop that piece of fish that 90% don't want so that I'm only getting the right fish to my net. And so part of this is that we have to hire with clarity. When we hire without a clear candidate profile, it's like treating without a diagnosis. You're guessing, and guessing's expensive. And at the end of the day, I don't want to waste my time drilling people. I want to spend my time understanding people. And so building that candidate profile, really getting down to the polarizing what fits, doesn't fit. So what if I said it this way? You're going to work 12-hour days, 6 days a week. You're going to be on call 24/7. And guess what? You're going to make 200 grand. If I said 200 grand and it's a demanding job, everyone would apply. If I gave those exact logistics that are required for the job, 1 out of 100,000 people would apply for that job. So it's just knowing those factors. And I think it's really critical that we do this. But the reality is there is a hiring crisis right now. So many of you are focused on just hiring anyone Brandon, I just need someone. And my viewpoint is you have a greater chance of hiring someone that will kill your business than hiring someone that will make your business. So we have to make sure that we are hiring based on qualitative fit because quantitative hiring is getting us down, but recognizing some of the averages. So 46% of new hires fail within 18 months. 30% of bad hires cost the employee's first year earnings to a company. 89% of hiring failures are due to attitude and not skill. I'm going to say that again. 89% of hiring failures are due to attitude, not skill. That's huge. It truly is. 42 days to fill a clinical role is the average private practice timeline right now. It used to be within days. My viewpoint is I want 6 months because honestly, I want to make someone feel like they have to run to Africa and back. That is my goal because then, whoo, they're blown away when they stay. They hold their form, everything. And so I come back to this component that 37% of practices with defined candidate profiles reduce turnover by astronomical numbers. And so I just think it's so crucial that you understand how critical it is to look for your ideal team player and not just the licensed team player. And so one of the things I do is I write the anti-job description for our advertisement. And so before you describe your ideal hire, I want you to describe the hire who would be a disaster. This exercise will force you. So, example, the disaster. The person that wants to do yoga at 10 a.m. and needs to leave. The person that wants a raise every year is a disaster hire for me. The person without performance expectations, I'll say it that way. The person that cares more about giving services for free than about generating revenue. Like I'm just building it in this sense. Because in healthcare, how many people, if I said you're focused on money more than anything else, they're like, no way, Jose, that doesn't work. And I'm like, guess what? The day you don't focus on money is the day you shouldn't care about your own money. And that usually creates accountability. And so we want to look at things that we don't tolerate. I don't tolerate the chronic excuse maker. I don't tolerate that's not my job employee. I don't tolerate the drama catalyst. You get my point? We're building these things, the anti-job description. So we're trying to figure out what don't we want. And so when we're doing this, you need to sit down with an office manager, trusted team member, whoever that is, and think of the worst hire you've ever made. What made them a bad fit? Write down everything without filtering. Then flip every item into a positive requirement. This is your real job advertisement. And so this is going to help you bring positivity. We're looking for someone that shows up 20 minutes early before their start time. We're looking for someone that really embodies accountability. We're looking for someone that would rather take on more responsibilities and not make more money than whatever. You get my point. Like I'm getting a little ridiculous here, but you get my point. And so as we look at this, here's a practice exercise I want you to try this week. I want you to write down the 3 behaviors that made your worst hire such a bad fit. And I'm going to say that again. Write down the 3 behaviors that made your worst hire such a bad fit. Don't soften it. Be specific. Then ask yourself, do any of your current interview questions actually screen for those things? If not, your hiring process has a gap. I recently had an incredibly bad hire. And the reality was that first and foremost, behavioral wise, she was a pathological liar, plain and simple. Lied on resume, lied in interview, lied to everything. The second thing was never took accountability. It always was, well, I'm sorry, I must have made a mistake, but no responsibility, no accountability. The third thing was would not take communication seriously. So, hey, this is what's happening. Oh, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. I got it. Did not recognize the severity of things. And so these are just some examples, but this is where I want you to write worst fit behaviors. So one of the things I recently started doing in my job post to help with this is I put our 3 core values that actions within our organization show on a daily basis. So for me, those 3 things, and you've heard me talk about this in other episodes, but the first thing is responsiveness. I actually highlight that. So every action I take has responsiveness. I need people that respond to everything. You have to over communicate in my organization. You have to treat people like your tongue is the most valuable thing in how you bring skill to what we do. The second thing, transparency, all about transparency. And you need to show, truly show everything. Don't show me what I want to hear. Be real. Transparency. The third thing, and I think that when I'm looking at this third thing, this third value, I just, I recognize that, you know, it's so important that people show up. And so as we look at things, transparency and authenticity, my big thing is integrity. How do you exemplify integrity in everything you do? Integrity in how I treat people, integrity how I treat the company, integrity on expectations, plain and simple. So I want to see how you show up with those 3 things. And so I put that into that job description, that job post, and I'm pretty clear about that so that we're rocking and rolling with those functions. And so again, my 3 core values that are actually in my job post as we speak, transparency, integrity, and at the end of the day, responsiveness. So responsiveness, integrity, transparency, you got it, etc. Now, one of the things I need you to recognize is there's a psychology behind bad hires. So, Dr. Mark Hyman says we hire for skill and fire for behavior every time. And I want to say that again. It's so interesting. We hire for skill and we fire for behavior every time. Most hiring decisions are made in the first 90 seconds of an interview. A phenomenon called thin slicing. Research from Princeton shows interviewers form lasting impressions within the first handshake. This is why structured hiring processes outperform gut feel every time. And so these biases are powerful. And without intentional effort, they can lead to hiring individuals who look good on paper. Again, I just made this mistake. Look good on paper. They make a strong initial impression, but ultimately lack the necessary behavioral traits or cultural fit for your practice. The biggest thing that I recognize that I didn't do is I didn't go after reference checks, because I can get creative with questions with reference checks, and recognizing these pitfalls is your first step. And so you have to understand, is there a confirmation bias? We unconsciously seek evidence that confirms our first impression, ignoring red flags. The halo effect, one impressive credential blinds us to a dozen red flags. And then the third is similarity bias. We hire people who remind us of ourselves, limiting team diversity and capability. And so awareness of these biases doesn't eliminate them. A structured scorecard does. And something that recently happened in one of my group coaching programs, one of the people said something I really appreciate. And they're like, what about a cultural ad? Someone that adds to your culture, someone that changes that landscape. And so looking at that, I think, is really important as well. And so we need to ultimately reverse engineer our top performers. Look internally. Your best employees are already telling you what looks great. The problem is that most practice owners never decode the pattern. And so you have to pick your top 3 performers, not just the most credentialed, but the ones who make the practice run better just by showing up. And as you go through this, I want for each of your top 3 performers, I want you to answer these 5 questions honestly. These answers will become your candidate scorecard, a tool far more powerful than any job description you'll find online. And so, one, how did they handle their worst day? Stress reveals character. What did they do when a patient was furious, the schedule collapsed, or a team member called out? So that's question one. Two, what do they do without being asked? Initiative is one of the hardest traits. What do we do? What proactive behaviors do they consistently exhibit? So, again, what do they do without being asked? Three, how do patients talk about them? Reviews, verbal feedback, repeat visits tell you exactly what the person brings to the patient experience. What if we asked people for letters of recommendation from past patients if they were allowed, you know? And obviously, authenticating that's tough, but it's always interesting if a patient were a reference. What did they struggle with early on? Understanding their learning curve tells you what to expect from future hires and how to onboard them. So, what did you struggle with early on? And then, what would break if they left tomorrow? And I love that question. This tells you what critical functions they've quietly owned and what competencies are non negotiable in their replacement. So, I want you to turn these insights into a scorecard. Once you've answered those questions for each of your top performers, look for overlap. The traits that appear across all 3 people, those are the non negotiables, the must haves on every future scorecard. So we're going to do a non negotiables traits present in all 3 top performers required for every candidate. We're going to do strong signals, traits present in 2 to 3 heavily weighted in your scoring. And then nice to haves, traits present in 1 of 3, valuable but not disqualifying if absent. And so rate every candidate from 1 to 5 on each non negotiable before making an offer. Stop hiring on gut, start hiring on data and data that you're driving. And so that's where we'll put in skills tests and different abilities on behalf of that. We'll even add in the, obviously the criteria of um, checking references, etc. So if you can't describe specifically why your best employee is your best employee, you won't be able to hire another one like them. The scorecard isn't a form, it's a mindset shift. You're building a data driven hiring process from people that already are succeeding in your building. And so this is so crucial. And I bring this up because I've been blessed with people. And when I look at just in general, like some of my longest retention employees that I say are top employees, the number one attribute that I see in each of them is they treat my companies as their companies. There is a responsibility as if they were a business owner. They put on a business owner mindset. So, when we're doing behavioral interview questions, here are some that actually do work. And so, tell me about a time a patient or client was upset with you. What happened? What did you do? Describe a situation where you had to juggle multiple urgent tasks at once. How did you prioritize? Tell me about that coworker you found difficult to work with. What did you do? How did you handle it? What were some game changing interventions you took? Give me an example of a time you caught a mistake before it became a problem. How did you handle it? Tell me about a time you had to deliver bad news to a patient or family. Walk me through what that looked like. So I just bring this up because these are things that are going to help you. And as we look at this, we start to look at, as we identify our ideal candidate profile, we also have to build a 30, 60, 90-day onboarding blueprint connected to that profile. So phase 1 is orientation and immersion. When we're hiring people, shadowing roles for at least 1 shift, learning the practices, non-negotiables, complete all compliance and systems trainings, meet one-on-one. But one thing I want you to know from day 1, give them actions that they must perform independently and then grade those actions. give them initial feedback. How did they do? And continue to build independence. As we go into that next phase, this is where we're guiding independence at another level. By 31 to 60, they need to be, in my opinion, fully independent. I give a 30-day opportunity. By 31 to 60, they're really independent, but we're continuing to monitor their independence. They're taking on full responsibilities, but we're doing weekly 15-minute check-ins. We're giving feedback. We're still looking at performance in that realm. By the time we get to 61 days, they should be fully integrated. There should be a way for us to evaluate the original scorecard. Did they fully identify and implement what we had expected? Identify one growth goal for the next quarter and then do that 90-day feedback input, because I think that's going to be very, very important. So a lot of people like to hear what I have to say about interviews. And obviously, I have my way of interviewing, but I'll tell you some red flags that I see. So the first red flag that I see is when a candidate I'm interviewing has something bad to say about a previous employer. What you say and how you say it's important. They badmouth the previous employer. I don't care. So there's a difference between constructive and badmouth. So constructive is, I wish that we had greater training in place. I felt that there were inconsistencies that if they had more training could have helped the organization a lot, versus this statement. Oh my God, my previous employer, they didn't value people. They didn't train people. They threw you to the wolves and they hope you died at the same time. You get my point. So we want to look for that. The next thing, this is really big. They can't give specific examples. And how I catch this is when I ask a question and say, oh, that's a really good question. Oh, no, I don't know. That's a really good question. They can't give specific examples. Another bad thing is they're only asking about pay and time off and benefits and all of that, because that means they're just transactional. Another one is chronologically late to an interview. You better be 15 minutes early. I'm sorry, my time is worth more. Like, you want a job, and I come back, and maybe that's egotistical, but my viewpoint is you earn, in my opinion, the treatment. And I would, if I show up late to the interview, that's rude. I'm ready 5 minutes early. And so really understanding that is really important. Um, Another easy way to see, like, hey, red flag, is they have no questions at the end. And within that, they have not researched their company. Oh, I see this, I see that. Like, I want to see, again, I invest my soul in everything I do. I need that too. I spend 45 minutes telling someone I'm not a good fit when they email about my billing services. Every single action is an investment. And when you treat me like a 30-second dime minute, boom, you're out. You're done. And I bring that because we need to raise the bar. It is a luxury to work. It is a gift to have purpose. We need to find people that want to invest their souls in work. You want to lay on the beach all day? Go win the lottery. You want to change the world? Come with us. Join us. And so the last thing is that the references are suspiciously unavailable. That's a bad flag, if you know what I mean. And so all of these things are things that you should be looking for. And I think it's crucial that as we look at our hiring processes, I love what Lee Iacocca says. I hire people brighter than me, then I get out of their way. Again, I hire people to complement. Steve Jobs says, the secret of my success is that we have gone to exceptional lengths to hire the best people in the world. And then Jim Collins, Good to Great, says, hiring the wrong person is the most costly mistake you can make. The right person in the wrong role is the second most costly. I love that. The right person in the wrong role is the second most costly. Incredible. These aren't just inspirational words, they're operational philosophies. And so I look to those leaders in how we do things. And it's really important that as we build our candidate profile, we have a realistic job profile and preview. That most practices sell the job interviews. You need people to experience it. I think people need to show up and see. Show them how hard the parts are first. A realistic job preview is the antidote to early turnover. Instead of selling the position, you present it honestly, include the grind. Candidates who are going to stay will last. And so having them even do observation with employees, understanding what it looks like, getting a taste of all those different things, because I want you to think of the last person who quit in their first 60 days or the last person you fired who didn't last after 60 days. I'd bet that at least part of the reason is that the job wasn't what they expected. And so the realistic job preview doesn't scare good candidates away. It attracts the right ones. And resilient people aren't deterred by honesty. And again, transparency is one of my core values, and that's why we're all about that. So our recap for your ideal candidate profile: write the anti-profile, reverse engineer success, preview the hard truth, and just know that there's nothing greater than creating an opportunity for someone that fits your culture, your mold, and can co-create with you to the next level. Thank you so much for joining us in this episode of the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast. I would be beyond grateful if you'll do a couple things for me. One, write a review. The reviews really help on the podcast. If you can write it on Apple Tunes or Spotify or wherever you listen, stream, YouTube, whatnot, reviews would be incredible. Share this podcast with other practice owners. Let them find value in it as well, because ultimately, together we can thrive, not just survive. Thank you for tuning in to the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast. I'm incredibly grateful to each and every one of you. Exciting news. We're now available everywhere, from Spotify to Apple Podcasts to YouTube or anywhere you like to listen to your podcasts. So watch, listen, and reach out. If you love this episode, please drop a 5-star review. It truly means the world to me. Are you looking for more ways to elevate your practice? If so, now is your chance. Reach out, go to my website, or email me at brandon@wellnessworksmp.com. And remember, it's not just about surviving, it's about thriving.